Alright, what's up guys? It's Mr. Rebella, and we're going to start solving percent problems. We did what percents were and some conversions between fractions and percents. Now we're going to go ahead and actually solve percent problems and figure out how to solve like 10% of a number and in increments of 1% of a number. So let's get started and check out this comic right here. I love secrets. I have a secret for a way of finding 21% of 80. Well, 10% of 8, 10% is 8, right? That makes sense, right? 10% of 80 is 8. You just, divide by 10, you get 8. And 1% is 0.8, which also makes sense, because if you're taking 1%, you're just dividing by 100, so you get to 0.8. You're moving the decimal over 2 times to the left, because if you have 80, the decimal is here, taking 1% of that, you just move it 2 times to the left, right there. So it's a 0.8. That's 1% of 80, okay? Because 1%, remember what I said, is 1 out of 100. So 1 out of 100 times 80 becomes 80 over 100. Doot. That goes down. You get 8 tenths. Well, 8 tenths is 0.8. So 21% is, you get 10% is 8, another 10% is 8, and another 1% is 0.8, so 16.8. So we're going to be learning how to do that in a more efficient way. You don't really have to do it mentally, but knowing this stuff, you will be able to. Okay, so let's explore some percent bars right now. Let's check. Okay, so this is linked over here in the slideshow, and I guess I'll put a link in the YouTube description as well. So as you can see here, you have a bar, right? And you have 80. We're calling this 80. So on the bottom it says 80. So we're going to try to find 10% increments of 80. So you can see this bar is split up into tens. So every time I move it over to the right, that's another 10%, 40%, 50%, 60%, right? So if I wanted to find 10% of 80, right there, it's 8, because I divide 80 by 10. So if I want to find 40% of 80, well, if I already know what 10% is, which is 8, I just do that 4 times, because 4 times 10 is 40. So 8 times 4 is 32. So 40% of 80 is going to be 32. So if I want 70%, same thing. You know that 10% is 8, so 70% is going to be 7 times that. So 7 times 8 is going to be 56. So that's fine with 10% increments. That's nice, because you can get 10% of something and then multiply it by like 7 if you're trying to find 70%. But what if it's like I want to find 16%, and that's not a multiple of 10. So there's another bar right here that's shown. So we're going to start off with 80 also, right? So, and I can have my slider over here. So 10% is also 8, right? But remember, what about 1%? So 1%, if I slide this all the way over here, that's 0.8. So anytime you want to find something that's a multiple of 1%, you would multiply by 0.8. So let's say my example was 16%, right? Or like the example over there that the dog was giving was 21%. So that makes sense, right? Like right here, this is 10% is 8. Another 10% is 16, and then 1%, we already said 1% was 0.8, so we're just adding those together, so 0.8. So if I wanted to find, like 62%, right? I would find 60%, so that's 60%, that's 48, right? Because I did 8, then 20 is another 8, another 8, another 8, another 8, another 8, right there. So I have 48. So 6 times 8 is 48, right? And then 63%, I have 0.8 3 times. So 1, 2, 3. So it's going to be 50.4. So maybe you're thinking, that's way too hard. What am I supposed to do? There is an easier way, but I just wanted to show you this bar model because it's pretty cool that it shows the 100% and the 80 on the bottom. And if you're doing this, we can change this actually if you want to find something else. If you want to find, let's say something was on sale for $40 and you wanted to find 25% of that. Well, you would just go, okay, 40% is 4. That means 20% is 8. and 25%. So each 1% is 0.4. So 2, 3, 4, 5, that's going to be 10. Okay, there's actually a way better way to do this when you're doing 25% though, and that's what we're going to be talking about right now. 25% of 40 is what number? So there's a better way to do it than that. And that way is directly related to what we're doing in our last lesson, which was converting these to fractions. If you can convert this percent to a nice looking fraction, you should do that. So 25%, hopefully you knew that that's 1/4. If you didn't, you know that 25% means 25 over 100. If you reduce that by 25, you get 1 out of 4. And of, that word of means you're going to multiply. So 1/4 times 40, and it's 40 over 1. And as you can see, you can cross cancel if you wanted to, right? You got, this is 1 and 10. So 1 times 10 is 10, 1 times 1 is 1, you get 10. 25% of 40 is 10, and that's exactly what we got when we're using the slider. Let's check this out. How did Newton know that 10% of 80 is 8? Well, I kind of did this very quickly earlier, but 10% is 100, or sorry, 10 per cent means 100. So 1 over 100 is the same as 1/10. So how did you know that 10% of 80 is 8? Well, you did 1/10 times 8. So 8 over 1. If you want to, you can cross cancel here, divide by 2. You get a 4 and a 5, and then you get 4/5. And if you didn't know what 4/5 was as a decimal, right? If you forgot how to do that, you do 4 divided by 5. This is 0.8. Okay, so 10% of 80 is 8. And the way they showed this here is you could also use a model as well. So 10% of 80, whoops, right? You could have also used multiplication, 10% of 80, and that's what we did earlier. The kind of faster way to do this is, how do you move the decimal point to 10% of a number? So let's check this out. Okay, so another way of doing this, well, it says, how do you move the decimal point to find 10% of a number? Well, move the decimal point one place to the left. So 10% of 80, you just move the decimal place over to the left once, because since we already said 10% was the same as multiplying by 1/10, right? 1/10 is like multiplying by 0.1. If you multiply by 0.1 anything, right, 80 times 0.1, it stays the same. You have 80, but since there's one decimal place here, you move it one place to the left. You get 8. So that's why you're moving it one place to the left. If it's 10% of anything, you move the decimal point one place to the left. That's like a very quick shortcut. So if I wanted 10% of 30, I move the decimal point 1 point to the left. That equals 3, because 10%, remember, is 1/10 times 30. If I'm multiplying that, I get 30 over 10. That equals 3. So that's a shortcut that you can just memorize and just know 10% of anything, you move the decimal point over to the left once. So 10% of 64, that's going to be, move the decimal over to the left once, 6.4. Again, if you change that to a decimal or a fraction and do it the long way, you get 1/10 times 64. Then you get 64 over 10. So, I mean, you can see there 64 over 10. 64 divided by 10 is going to be 6.4. All right, so that's just a quick shortcut there. And here's some mental math ideas with what we've just been talking about here. 12% of 40. Okay, 12% of 40. So again, we're trying to think, okay, 10% of 12. You're moving the decimal point over to the one, over 1 to the left, right? 12% of 40. So you're gonna do 10% first. So 10% of 40, you move the decimal over to the left once, and that's equal to 4. So you get 4. And 1% of 40. Well, 1% of 40 is 0.4. So this is 0.4. So 0.4, 0.4. So if you add all those together, you get 4.8. And maybe I didn't explain how you get 1%. It's the exact same thing as 10%, except you're moving it over 2 times to the left. So 1% is the same as 1%, which is 1 over 100, times 40. So if you do that, you get 40 over 100, and you cross cancel there. You get 4 over 10, or 2/5. So that's 0.4, 0.4. The other way of looking at that is you're doing whatever the number is divided by 100. So if I do 40 divided by 100, I'm always going to get this, because it's going to be divided by 1. So it's going to be 0.4. Okay, so you're just moving the decimal over 2 times to the left. So that's just a shortcut. Okay, you don't have to, but otherwise the only way you would know how to do this right now would be to make it into a fraction. Okay, yeah, because we're going to go over other strategies later on. Let's try this now. 19% of 50. So I could also think of it like this. 10% of 50, so 10% of 50 is 5, right? 1% of 50 is 0.5. So I can actually think of this as, since it's 19, I could go 10 plus 1 plus 1 plus 1, but 19% is the same thing as saying 10 plus 10, which is 20, minus 1%. So let's see that. So 10% is 5, plus another 10% is 5, so this is 10%, this is 10%, and minus 1% is 0.5. So if I do that, I get 10 minus 0.5 is 9.5. So key idea here, finding percent of a number, write the percent as a fraction first, then multiply by the whole. The percent times the whole equals the part. So 20%, change 20% to 1/5, multiply, and then you find the percent. So another example of this, use a fraction to find 75% of 80. If you didn't know what 75% is, 75 you just find out by making it over 100, right? So that becomes 3/4. So 3/4 of, this means multiply, right, of 80. Okay, so I don't want to do that yet. I'm gonna cross cancel. I can divide by 4. This is 1, and this is gonna be 20. Okay, so 3 times 20 is 60. So 75% of 80 is 60. So if you can make it in a fraction, you should do that first. The methods I showed up here, that's if you want to either do it mentally or you can't come up with a fraction right away. This is just a shortcut. Because, I mean, all of these you can make a fraction, right? 19% is 19 over 100, but you don't really want to do 19 over 100 times 50. You could, that's not bad or anything. It just ends up, you're going to end up having to do some long division. Cool. So next idea is finding the whole. So this is another part of solving for percents, is finding the whole. So write the percent as a fraction, then divide the part by the fraction. So if the question is the part divided by the percent equals a whole. So if I said 20% of 60 is 12, if I translate that, the of is my multiplication sign and is the equal sign. 1/5 times 60 is 12. So if I reverse that, if I go backwards, I get 12 divided by 1/5 is going to be 60. That's how I find my whole. Okay, so this example here, 75% of what number is 48? So 75%, so I'm gonna make this 3/4 of, that's multiplied, what number is 48? So remember, if you don't know what this number is, then you're going to divide. You're going to need to divide. You're going to divide this number, 48 divided by 3/4. So 48 over 1 equals 3/4. Because if I want to find out what this number is, let's call that an x. Exactly what we're doing. We're undoing this multiplication. We multiplied 3/4 times something. Now we're undoing it by dividing. So 48 over 1, and this is going to change it to multiplying, and this is 4 over 3. So if you do that, you can cross cancel a little bit here. This is a 1. Okay. So you get 16, and 16 times 4 is going to be 64. So 75% of 64 is 48. So my answer here is 75% of 64 is 48. And you can double check that. You can go, okay, 75%. So 3/4 times 64, does that equal 48? All right, so let's check. So I did my problem correctly. Okay, so coming back around to one of the older examples also, use a ratio table to find the part, 60% of 150 is what number? So 60% of 150. So 60% of 150 is what number? So I don't have to divide, I could just multiply, right? So you could use a ratio table. I can make a table like this. 60% means 60 out of 100, right? Okay, so 50% right here is going to be 30, because to get from 100 to 50, you divide by 2. So 60 divided by 2 is going to be 30. Now that you know what 50% is, well, to get from 50 to 150, you multiply by 3. So 30 times 3 is going to be 90. Okay, so you could have done that. Another way you could have done this is to make it into a fraction as well. So make 60 into a fraction. So 60 is 60 over 100, which is the same thing as 6 over 10, which is the same thing as 3 over 5. You can do that times 150. And then now you can cross cancel the 5 and the 150. So this is going to be a 1, and this is going to be a 30. And 3 times 30 is going to be 90. So this way takes a little bit longer, but maybe it's easier for some of you guys to understand. But this way is a little faster. You can change it into a fraction and then just multiply. And to end that off, you can also make it into a decimal. So 60% as a decimal, if you didn't know what that was, we already said it's 6 over 10, right? 3/5 is a decimal, 6/10 is actually better. 6/10 is actually 0.6. Like, read it correctly, 6/10, right? You can actually divide, you could actually just multiply that way. You can go 150 times 0.6. All right, so you do that, and then you got 3, whoops, 9, and then move the decimal over to the left once, and you get 90. So either way, I think these are the fastest ways to do it. If you understand it, make it into a fraction first, if it's easy, because fractions, I feel like it's really fast to do it because you can cross cancel stuff. If not, you can make it into a decimal. So make that percent into a decimal, whichever way you can, and then multiply. Percents can be made into decimals rather easily. If you had 35%, to make that into a decimal, you would actually just move the decimal over 2 times to the left. Kind of talked about this before, because that equals 0.35. Why does that work? Well, because 35% is 35 over 100. If you read that correctly, it's 35 hundredths. So just move it over 2 times left. We're going to talk about this a little bit more, but I know that was a lot of stuff. So hopefully this was helpful if you need to go back and forth with things. But yeah, that was an introduction to solving percent problems. And I'll see you guys next time.